I used to think I had Islam all figured out. Terrorism, oppression, strict rules. That's what came to mind. That's what I believed. And I was wrong. Totally wrong. Not just a little misinformed, fundamentally wrong. And I've got to own that. Because when you've got a platform like mine, when millions of people listen to you, what you say carries weight. So if I help spread the wrong idea, even unintentionally, then I've got a responsibility to come back and say, I messed up. Loudly, publicly, honestly. I've sat across from scientists, philosophers, monks, fighters, the smartest minds in the world. We've talked about everything from human consciousness to the multiverse. But somehow I let a billion people's way of life get reduced to a headline in my mind. I didn't ask enough questions. I didn't dig deeper. I thought I knew. But what I learned flipped everything I believed about Muslims, about faith, about what it means to live with purpose. This isn't a conversion story. This isn't a press release. This is me saying, I saw something real, something powerful, and I can't stay silent about it. So, yeah, I was wrong about Islam, and now I want to talk about it. It didn't happen overnight. There wasn't some grand dramatic moment where I woke up enlightened. It started small, just a guest on the podcast. A Muslim guy, soft-spoken, sharp as hell. We weren't even talking about religion at first. We were discussing discipline, routine, mental clarity, the stuff I love diving into. And then he mentioned prayer. Not casually, not performatively, just with presence, like it meant everything. He said, I pray 5 times a day because it keeps my ego in check. That line stuck with me. Ego. That's a language I understand. I've spent years talking about mastering the self, cold plunges, meditation, ayahuasca trips, fasting, journaling, whatever tool helps you go inward. But here's this guy telling me his entire system for ego control is centered around prayer, submission, not to a plant, not to a practice, but to God. And he wasn't trying to convince me. He was just living it. That shook something loose in me. I'd be lying if I said I didn't used to brush Islam off. I'd hear things, nod, move on. Never really listened. Maybe I thought I was being tolerant just because I wasn't openly hostile. But deep down, I had this filter, this bias I never admitted to. I'd see a headline, bombing, hijab, controversy, whatever, and I'd lump it all together. I didn't stop to think, what's the context? Who are the people behind this faith? I just kept scrolling. Then something changed. I came across this documentary just by chance. It was about the Islamic Golden Age. Scholars, physicians, inventors, poets, Muslims who were shaping the world when the West was still in the dark. And I sat there stunned, like, why the hell didn't I know any of this? Why wasn't I taught that the foundations of medicine, mathematics, philosophy, astronomy, so much of it came from Islamic thinkers? That was the first time Islam stopped being this abstract other and became something real, something human, something wise. But the real punch to the gut came later. I read a verse from the Quran, said, verily in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. I don't know why that hit me so hard, but it did. Maybe because I've spent so much of my life searching for peace in noise. And here's this simple, ancient line telling me where it's always been. That was the wake-up call. Not a thunderclap, just a quiet unraveling of everything I thought I knew. I didn't even know I was prejudiced. That's the scary part. I thought I was being objective. I thought I was just calling it like I see it. But when I really stepped back and looked at how I formed my opinion of Islam, man, it was all secondhand. Headlines, movies, news clips, and jokes. A lot of jokes. I grew up in a culture where Muslims were either the villains or the punchlines. You watch enough action movies, and it's always the same scene. Dark-skinned guy with a beard, yelling in Arabic, holding a detonator, threatening the world. You see that enough times, it starts sinking into your subconscious. Then 9/11's happened, and the fear turned into policy, into war, into this blanket suspicion of an entire faith. And the media, man, they ran with it. Every negative story about a Muslim became a national conversation. Every positive story, silence. I didn't question it, not really. I absorbed it like everyone else. Thought I was immune because I had Muslim friends or because I never said anything too extreme. But let's be real, I mocked it. I made assumptions. I saw hijab and thought oppressed. I heard Allahu Akbar and felt tension. I saw a mosque and thought foreign. I didn't mean to be hateful, but ignorance is a slow poison. It blinds you without you even realizing it. And when Muslims tried to speak up, when they tried to explain what their faith actually stood for, I'd listen just enough to say I was open-minded, but not enough to be changed. Because I thought I already knew. I thought I was informed, balanced, rational. But it wasn't rational, it was reactive. It was a mindset shaped by fear-based narratives, echoed over and over by people who didn't know the first thing about the religion they were trashing. And here's the part I hate admitting. I used that ignorance for entertainment. Whether it was subtle digs or lazy stereotypes, I played into it. Because it was easy, because it got laughs, because it was safe. And that's the problem. Mocking Islam became culturally safe, even encouraged. But the damage? That's real. Every time we casually paint 1.9 billion people with the same brush, we're deepening the divide. We're feeding fear. We're shutting down any chance for connection. Once I started actually reading, actually listening, my whole framework cracked. I realized I didn't know the difference between cultural practices and core beliefs. I couldn't tell you what the Quran actually said. I didn't even know what Islam meant. It means peace, by the way. Peace. I was walking around thinking I had it figured out when I didn't even know the foundation. So, yeah, I was prejudiced. Not in the way that screams hatred, but in the quiet way that assumes it's right. The way that doesn't ask questions. The way that avoids nuance. And once I saw that in myself, I couldn't unsee it. Then I actually started listening. Not just hearing, listening. With curiosity, with humility, and without trying to debate or disprove. I opened the Quran for the first time, not as a critic, but as someone willing to understand. I started asking questions, not to trap anyone, but to learn. And what I found was nothing like what I expected. The Quran wasn't this violent, rigid book like I had always imagined. It was poetic, reflective, deep. There were verses about mercy, compassion, justice, patience, and not in a vague, spiritual guru kind of way, but grounded in action. It spoke directly to the heart, but also to the mind. It challenged the ego. It reminded me of Stoic philosophy, actually, except it wasn't just about inner strength. It was about submitting to something higher, constantly, every day. And then I started having real conversations with Muslims, not filtered through a media outlet, not framed by a debate stage, just human to human. I talked to women in hijab who were educated, powerful, and confident. I talked to guys who woke up before sunrise every single day to pray, even when they were exhausted, even when no one was watching. I talked to families who built their whole lives around community, generosity, and service. And I visited mosques, not as a spectacle, but with an open heart. And let me tell you, the feeling of peace in those places, it's real. One Friday, I sat quietly in the back of a mosque during Jumu'ah prayer. Hundreds of men, shoulder to shoulder, praying in unison. No ego, no status, no politics, just submission, unity. I'd never seen anything like it. It was powerful, man, pure. And it made me reflect on my own chaos, the nonstop grind, the noise, the pressure, and I realized how far I drifted from anything that looked like stillness. And then there's the fasting. Ramadan blew my mind. It's not just not eating. It's discipline, yes, but it's also about compassion. It's about understanding the pain of others. It's about cutting distractions, detoxing your soul, sharpening your awareness. The idea is that by feeling hunger, you become more grateful, more humble, more giving. That's not weakness. That's strength most people never tap into. The charity to zakat, it's not optional. It's built into the faith. A portion of your wealth goes to those in need, no questions asked. And it's not about pity, it's about justice. It's about remembering that what you have isn't really yours. That kind of built-in generosity, that's powerful. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the more I learned about him, the more my respect grew. I didn't know he was an orphan. I didn't know he was known as Al-Amin, the trustworthy Al, long before he ever claimed prophethood. I didn't know he forgave people who tried to kill him. I didn't know he led armies, ruled with compassion, loved children, uplifted women, cared for the poor. I didn't know that when his people were starving, he starved with them. When they were attacked, he protected them. He didn't sit on a throne. He lived among the people. That's leadership. That's character. And the more I saw how Muslims tried to follow his example in prayer, in patience, in generosity, the more I realized how off base my assumptions had been. Breaking fast with a Muslim family during Ramadan was one of the most beautiful, soul anchoring experiences I've ever had. There's this sense of gratitude in every bite, this unspoken bond between everyone at the table. It's not performative, it's pure intention. What hit me the most, though, was how all of it, the prayer, the fasting, the charity, the discipline, the fast, it wasn't about control or oppression. It was about liberation from ego, from greed, from distraction, from the constant noise we all live in. Islam, at its core, isn't just a religion. It's a way to live with purpose, with integrity, with constant awareness of something greater than yourself. And I realized I hadn't just misunderstood Islam. I had underestimated its depth, its beauty, and its power. What really floored me, what still sticks with me, is the discipline, the kind of spiritual structure I never even knew I needed. I've done it all, man. Ice baths, ayahuasca, DMT, silent meditation retreats, fasting, jujitsu, journaling, all of it. Searching for peace, control, stillness, truth. And every one of those things taught me something valuable. But Islam? It's a full system, a lifestyle, a built-in framework for mastering the self that's been running for over 1,400 years, and it's still working. Let's start with the prayer, 5 times a day. That's not casual. That's not a motivational poster quote. That's real commitment. You stop whatever you're doing, work, eating, training, even sleep, and you face your creator. Not once, 5 times a day. Every single day. You realign, you reset, you humble yourself, you check your ego. It's like spiritual weightlifting. It demands presence, and there's no flex in it, no public display, no self-glorification. It's between you and God. Quiet, internal, consistent. Compare that to what we do in the West. We meditate for 10 minutes and call it a breakthrough. We fast for 16 hours and post about it on Instagram. We take cold plunges and tell everyone how disciplined we are. But Muslims are out here living this deep, structured, humble path, and they've been doing it for centuries. No hype, no branding, just obedience, self-mastery, and purpose. And then Ramadan. Bro, Ramadan changed the way I think about willpower. Imagine fasting from sunrise to sunset, no food, no water, nothing. Not just once, not just as a challenge, for an entire month. 30 days of hunger, thirst, no indulgence, no ego games. It's not suffering, it's refinement, a cleansing. Muslims don't do it to lose weight. They do it to remember, to connect, to sharpen the soul. And what's wild is that during Ramadan, Muslims are more generous, more patient, more grateful. It's like a global reset on the human ego every single year. And that's the thing. Islam doesn't ask you to indulge. It demands that you discipline your desires, your anger, your envy, your lust, your greed. It's not about self-denial in a punishing way. It's about transcendence. You don't chase dopamine. You don't follow the urge. You train yourself to pause, to remember who you are, why you're here, and who's in charge. That's what really hit me. In the self-help world, we talk about being present, about being still, about taming the mind. Islam already has that in full. Not in a weekend retreat kind of way, but baked into everyday life. Structured, grounded, proven. It made me realize something humbling. All this time I've been chasing tools for self-mastery. Islam had already built the blueprint. You know what frustrates me the most? That I had to go digging for truth that should have been common knowledge. Like, why didn't anyone ever tell me this stuff growing up? Why didn't I learn about the Islamic golden age in school? Why was it always Rome, Greece, maybe some European Enlightenment guys? And that's it. As if there was just this black hole of knowledge in the middle of history. It's not just an oversight, it's erasure. Here's what I didn't know. While Europe was still stuck in the dark ages, the Islamic world was thriving. I'm talking about massive libraries, universities, hospitals, observatories. Muslims were leading the charge in medicine, astronomy, mathematics, philosophy, and not just copying ideas, but creating them, advancing them, preserving ancient knowledge and expanding on it. Baghdad's House of Wisdom was basically the Silicon Valley of the 9th century. Scientists, scholars, translators from all over the world gathered to share and build knowledge together. And I'm sitting here like, why is this the first time I'm hearing about it? People like Ibn Sina, this dude wrote one of the most important medical texts in history, the Canon of Medicine, used in Europe for centuries. Al-Ghazali, one of the greatest philosophers and theologians to ever walk the earth, someone who blended reason with spirituality in ways that still resonate today. Al-Khwarizmi, you like algebra? Thank him. Literally. The word algorithm comes from his name. These weren't just religious guys in robes sitting around chanting. These were intellectual giants who shaped the very foundation of the modern world. But do we ever hear about that number? All we get is this politicized version of Islam, framed as a threat, reduced to a handful of extremists, weaponized in media sound bites. It's always about terrorism, oppression, conflict. That's the lens. And when that's the only narrative being fed to you for decades in news and movies and pop culture, it's no wonder we all grew up with this distorted view. We weren't just uninformed. We were misinformed. Islam has become this go-to scapegoat in the West. You want to justify a war? Drop the word radical. You want to get ratings? Talk about a clash of civilizations. It's all fear-based, click-driven nonsense. And meanwhile, the truth, the depth, the beauty, the contribution gets buried, silenced, forgotten. And the craziest part is none of this is hidden. It's out there. The books, the history, the philosophy, it's all available, but no one points you to it. You have to want to find it. And that's what frustrates me the most. I spent years thinking I had a clear picture of the world, when in reality, I'd been shown a tiny filtered piece of it. A piece designed to keep me afraid, not informed. So, yeah, I was wrong, but I also wasn't given the full story. And I think a lot of people out there are in the same boat. Not hateful, not bad people, just never told the truth. What really changed me more than books, more than history, more than facts, was the people, real Muslims. Not the ones you see in headlines or political debates, but the ones I sat down with, broke bread with, laughed with, the ones who invited me into their homes without hesitation, who shared their stories, their faith, and their food with this raw, sincere hospitality that I've never experienced anywhere else. I remember walking into a family's home during Ramadan. I was just there to observe, maybe ask a few questions. Next thing I know, I'm sitting at the table with them at sunset, and when they broke their fast, they insisted I eat first. I was the guest, and yet they served me with joy like it was an honor to feed me. That level of generosity, no ego, no performance, it comes from the heart. And I saw that again and again. In different cities, different countries, Muslims of all backgrounds, Arab, African, Asian, American, welcoming me like a brother, different languages, different cultures, but the same spiritual bond. That unity, that's not something you fake. That's real. And it wasn't just kindness. It was wisdom, depth. These weren't people living in fear or dogma. They were grounded. You could feel it. Their prayer wasn't mechanical. Their values weren't just rules. They lived with purpose, with a rhythm to life that centered on peace, gratitude, humility, and trust in something bigger than themselves. What also opened my eyes and honestly made me confront a lot of my own bias was talking to Muslim women. Because I'll be honest, I had assumptions. I thought the hijab was a sign of oppression. I thought they were forced into silence. But when I actually listened, that narrative collapsed. So many of the women I met were bold, articulate, educated, and proud of their faith, proud of their choice. The hijab, for many of them, wasn't about control. It was about identity, about dignity, about placing value on who they are, not just how they look. And it hit me. We've been sold a lie. We judge what we don't understand. And in doing so, we strip people of their humanity. Islam, at its core, isn't about domination or division. It's about peace, about generosity, about forgiveness, not just in theory, but in practice. I met people who had lost family in war, who had been discriminated against their whole lives, and still they chose grace, chose love, chose faith. The people changed me because they made Islam real. Not an idea, not a debate, not a stereotype, but a living, breathing example of strength, patience, and compassion. And that kind of truth, you can't unsee it once you've felt it. The quiet hit me the hardest.
In a world that's constantly loud, notifications, headlines, podcasts, opinions flying at you from every direction, finding stillness almost feels impossible. We chase peace with noise.
We try to relax by staying busy, but Islam flipped that for me. It doesn't yell, it doesn't shove, it invites. softly, gently, consistently. And when I finally stopped long enough to really listen, the quiet overwhelmed me in the best way possible. There's this moment in prayer after the movements, after the recitations, where you just sit still, nothing but your breath and the awareness that you're not in control. And instead of panic, that brings peace because you remember you're not supposed to carry it all. You're not the center, you're not the master. That surrender, that letting go, it's like spiritual exhale, a pause from the madness of trying to hold the universe together on your own. Islam builds that rhythm of reflection into daily life. Gratitude isn't a hashtag, it's a mindset, a duty, a discipline. Every prayer begins with Alhamdulillah, all praise is due to God. You start and end your day by remembering what matters. And slowly, without forcing it, that mindset starts to shape your behavior. Your thoughts, your heart. I noticed it happening to me. Less screen time, more silence. I started journaling more, sitting still without needing to fill the space. I'd go outside, just breathe, no phone, no music, and let my thoughts settle. It wasn't about being productive. It was about being present, about learning to just be. And honestly, that's where the healing began. We're addicted to the noise. We think silence means something's wrong. But in that quiet, that undistracted, sacred quiet, is where I found the most truth, the most peace. And it didn't come from a podcast. It came from a 1400-year-old practice designed to realign you 5 times a day with what matters most. If you're chasing peace, if you're tired of the chaos in your head, the tension in your chest, maybe it's not about adding more. Maybe it's about removing the noise, sitting still, listening, and remembering you're not in control. And that's okay. It was never just about religion. What Islam did, what really shook me, was hold up a mirror. Not to the world, not to politics, not to culture, but to me, to my ego, my habits, my excuses, my pride. It forced me to look at the parts of myself I'd learned to justify or ignore, all the noise I used to cover up the uncomfortable truth. And I saw clearly, maybe for the first time, who I really was and who I wanted to become. Islam isn't just a list of beliefs. It's not just rituals. It's a transformation. It's a full, unflinching commitment to being better, not for the world's approval, but for something higher. It's about intention, what Muslims call niyyah, why you do what you do, who you're trying to please, what your real motives are. That hit me hard because it meant I had to stop performing and start living with purpose. Then there's taqwa, God consciousness, the idea that you carry the awareness of the divine with you always, in your thoughts, your speech, your private life. You don't just act right when people are watching, you live right because you know someone greater is always watching. That kind of accountability, it's next level. And it's not fear-based. It's freeing because it means your worth isn't tied to likes, applause, or image. It's tied to truth. Islam didn't just teach me about God. It taught me about myself, my weakness, my potential, my responsibility. And it's not about perfection. It's about direction. It's about showing up every day, being honest, being humbled, and striving to be just a little bit closer to who you were created to be. I don't know where this ends, but I'm not going back. Look, I'm still not a scholar. I'm not some expert. I'm just a guy who started asking better questions and got answers I never expected. This isn't a conversion video. I'm not doing this for clicks or some viral narrative arc. I'm doing this because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Once something cracks your worldview wide open, there's no stuffing it back into the old box. I'm still learning, still stumbling, still figuring things out, but I am committed to listening more, to inviting more Muslims on the podcast, to building bridges instead of burning them. I'm done mocking what I didn't understand. I'm done repeating lazy stereotypes just because they're easy and familiar. That version of me, he's not coming back. And yeah, there's fear in all of this. Let's not pretend otherwise. When your identity starts shifting, when the things you once dismissed start feeling like home, it's disorienting. But it's also exciting and peaceful because now I'm moving towards something deeper, something that actually means something. If you've stuck with me this far, I want to leave you with this. Don't take my word for it. Don't just believe me because I've got a mic and a platform. Go find out for yourself. Read, ask, explore, talk to Muslims, visit a mosque, read the Quran, sit in the silence and see what speaks to you. You might be wrong too. And that's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to grow from. Because real strength isn't in being right, it's in being willing to change.